Hello, good morning, and welcome back to the Game Dev Show. I'm here with Andrew and Powell today, and we're going to be discussing a couple of really interesting things. I think we might be getting into some AI topics we were just kind of talking about right before the show started, as well as a lot of the things listed, maybe a little bit about what's going on at Unity, and I had a fun, interesting trip that I want to talk about as well. I got to drive around some of those Boston Dynamics Robodogs, which was a blast. So good morning, welcome, or afternoon, Powell over there. How you guys doing today?
Doing good.
Doing good. Having fun.
Good. Well, glad to be back here. We missed last week because I was off at a trip out to Tulsa, Oklahoma, where I was talking to a bunch of game developers, got to go talk at a couple colleges, do a couple other things I'll be talking about later. And I got to, like I said, drive around one of those Boston Dynamics, the little spot robot, the one that had that weird, you seen the fluffy face video yet? I don't know if you, let me pull that up. It was pretty hilarious though.
Is this the one with the flamethrower?
Huh?
Is this the one with the flamethrower on it?
I think that it's one that somebody put a flamethrower on and then got their thing bricked for putting a flamethrower on it. Apparently they're pretty strict about this stuff, but if you look at this guy right here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was one of those. I didn't get to drive the one with the costume, but I got to drive the regular one around, and it was really cool. So it's got a controller that feels like a Nintendo Switch, or like a Switch. So you're driving around with thumbsticks on each side, touchscreen in the middle that's got the cameras, and it runs pretty fast. You got full control over the tilt and all that stuff that you would expect. But then it also does like avoidance. I don't know what this. We got an ad here of. Oh no, this is just not what I wanted to show. But yeah, anyway, it'll avoid things. So it tracks the area. If you try to run it at a person, it'll actually run around them and just dodge them. It ran down the stairs, which freaked me out the first time I saw it going. I was like, oh, what's it? And just starts running down the stairs, runs back up. And then it also opened up a door. So I've got a little video. I'll get it up here in just a few. But it actually reaches up. It's got the arm on the back. It reaches up, grabs the door handle. All you do is touch the handle on the screen, tell it to open. It reaches up, touches the handle, pulls it open, walks in holding the handle, pushes the door back with its arm and its butt, and then walks inside the door. It's cool, but definitely a little bit creepy too, right? Like,
more powerful than a raptor then.
Yeah. It's basically, I mean, it can open doors, no problem. It can detect where the doorknobs are, and they're getting it to the point where that's all just going to be automatic and then probably controlled by some LLM type thing. That's
I feel like there's going to be a moment in time in the sometime near future, 10 years or so, that everything's just going to change. Like way more than ChatGPT being released changed things, like that. Everything changed with that. I think there's going to be a moment everything changes.
Is it when those robots start walking around? I don't know if you've seen all the videos of the humanoid robots. I saw one yesterday, a giant factory in China full of them, all doing automated tasks and training. I mean, I'm sure they got a bunch of them there, but all over. But it was crazy.
All that sort of stuff. It's all very interesting because obviously I don't think humans need to do certain tasks. Like there are certain things that humans do today, like cleaning toilets, that a human doesn't need to do. No human wants to clean a toilet. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are very happy with the result and they get pleasure from having a clean toilet from a toilet that wasn't clean before. But do they get pleasure from doing the act? No. Oh, here we go. So if this dog robot can also clean my toilet, I mean, not my toilet. My toilet's very clean, but
that's I gotta say, like, that's a very good idea, like an interesting project for them to do, I think, like as a thing, but also terrible for anybody whose job is to clean toilets. I feel like it's one of those things that's just gonna automate people out of jobs, but it would be like the kind of thing, it'd be perfect because there's no reason that it couldn't do that. And the attachment on there with the hand could just as easily have a brush thing, or just be able to hold a brush, grab the brush, scrub it, and then do all of the stuff that it needs to do.
A ton of brushes on its body to the sides and all that, and a couple of extra arms so that as it's walking, it can be dusting things and painting things and fixing things. It would be like a Swiss Army knife robot dog, but with cleaners.
Yeah, and just carrying stuff around. And then this is the Atlas. Yeah, we talk about when things change and get creepy. Like this might be it right here. Right?
Head. They had to make the head rotate like this way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm going to use for my next haunted house.
Yeah, that guy is definitely made to be a little creepy.
Yeah.
So it's walking and turns his body around.
That's not the way to introduce us to our new overlords.
Yes, it certainly looks a little bit villainy.
They need to put the fluffy dog costume on that robot too.
I agree. Yeah, the fluffy costume is much better. Cleaning my house, that's why I had to get this nice Dustin.
Put a fluffy dog costume on that and make it clean my toilet, and I'll be like, "Oh, come into my house, please, Data. Tell me what to do."
Yeah. I think they're going to have to do something like that in the future to get those things out there and get people to actually want to use them. So, maybe we'll get into some non-terrifying game dev stuff. So lots going on in the industry lately. Anything you guys want to jump into first? I know, Powell, you had a couple things you were kind of interested in.
Yeah, for me, there's so many things. I would say one thing today is 40th anniversary of the game. I was one of the first ones that I played, and that made me come to game dev. So it's the King Quest 1, 40th anniversary. So it's so many years from that time.
It doesn't seem like it's been that long. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, the game came before me. Before I was born, so it's me. It's quite long.
Yeah, it's been there. I remember playing on my uncle's computer.
My first King Quest was King Quest 5. It was very hard, but I started taking screenshots and then bring it into Photoshop and taking out the characters and just making my own little diorama scenes because the game was too hard.
Yeah.
For me, the first one was King Quest 2, but I played it way after it was released. I played it in 1990, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played it when it came out because I was like, I was a little kid, and my uncles had all the games and stuff. And okay, now you make me feel old. Well, I want to answer this question so I feel less old. The Bull asked about thoughts on Helldivers 2 and the PlayStation ordeal. Have you guys been following that and seen what happened where Sony essentially made everybody who had a Helldivers account switch over and sign up for a PlayStation account, and regardless of where they got it, and then they kind of, from what I understand, backtracked that so that you don't have to do that, but you can't buy the game you can't go buy the game. Like for the existing people, I think they don't have to do that, but the new ones, they can't buy the game anywhere without the PSN stuff now.
I've not heard about this, but it sounds terrible.
It's been a lot of backlash.
Yeah, it was lots of backlash. I think they changed mostly the reviews now, but I think how many legends just lost the possibility to buy the game?
What I saw was like 100 and something, 170 or something crazy.
Yeah, something like that. It's 177 countries lost the ability to play the game. Yeah, even Japan, from what I'm seeing, because Japan doesn't have the basic version of the. That's if you go a little high. Do you see the links? Oh, is it? Yeah. Here you have the list of all the countries.
Yeah.
This is the second image. Yeah, that's the list of the countries that lost the ability to play the game.
Huh.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's all right. The United States isn't on there. We're good.
Yeah, United States.
In a way, so I've often said I don't play that many games. I did buy Manor Lords the other day, so I've played that a little bit. I don't play too many games. In a way, I'm very happy I don't, because I've never had PlayStation, I've never had an Xbox, I've never subscribed to any of these services. So I've never faced this, but it sounds like I would be very unhappy too.
Yeah, as on PC for me, yeah, but I think there's one thing. They said they will do it when they first released the game. Yeah, they said it will happen in, I think, a month or two. Yeah, so but still making you to do PSN account on PC is something that shouldn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that, making people sign up for the services, especially there's really no value. It's not like they're signing up so that they can get into friends lists and other stuff. It's really just
but without it, the PlayStation doesn't have as much data. Yeah, the data is on Steam.
They can't market to you as well and send you the other games. Yeah, no.
Exactly. I think that's the biggest problem they have. Yeah, because before they released their games on PC, they had all the data, on the PlayStation. And now when they are releasing on Steam or Epic, they don't have it.
The data is more valuable than the money you pay for the game?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah. See that. So, yeah, I don't know. Anybody got other thoughts on that other than I think they'll probably just end up reversing it eventually and then re-add it. What they'll do is they'll reverse it and then they'll re-add it later. They'll do the same thing that they always do, like undo it and then slowly re-add it back in when nobody cares anymore.
It's hard to say, because on the Hell Divers are different kind of community. They brought the community together. All the campaigns on the working on the playing game was made to make the entire community work together to achieve one goal. And if you do something like that and you give this community a new enemy and you're the enemy, they will still work together against you. So I don't know if they will be able to push it again.
I just feel like they'll do it once people stop caring about that game and they've moved on to the next thing.
Yeah, but then they won't be. Most people just will say, nobody's playing this game. Why should I create an account?
Yeah. No, I tend to agree. I don't think it'll work out well, but I feel like that's just the way that they'll do it because this is the way it's the way the mindset works. They're like, hey, it didn't work, so we'll just wait and then we'll do it again. But,
yeah.
So there was some other. It looks like look, they may have already reversed it. Be interesting. But there was something else I wanted to talk about too, Andrew. So Story, I think, was going to hop in, and we were going to talk a little bit about some of the AI stuff he was doing. But I don't see him here today. And yesterday, I got an email asking about Writer's AI, how I use that. So I thought maybe we'd talk a little, and I was just talking to you before the show about the image AI stuff that I'm using because it's nice and simple, easy enough that my mom can use it. So maybe we could dive into that just a little bit. First, where do you want to start?
I don't know which AI topic.
Maybe we should let the people in chat that are with us live decide the code AI stuff or the art AI stuff. And it's not going to be a long discussion, but I do want to explain the ones that I'm using and why and how I'm using them, because they're easy enough that everybody can kind of get in. If nobody in chat says anything, then we'll just go with whatever Pal says. Yeah, Story had some interesting thoughts on AI, on encryption and other stuff too. Be curious. Okay, so we got one for code, one for art. Let's see what the next vote is. Quiet time. We gotta have some silence right in the middle of the show.
Well,
no one likes art.
I'm gonna. I'm going to remind people that AI art can produce all sorts of amazing artwork that will just inspire and enthrall you.
I must say that is terrifying. I can't even what so anybody that's not watching right now and just listening, you should watch, and you're missing out on this pig.
At some point in the past, I decided to make all of my streams for Magic Pig games have a pig with a wizard hat on and doing something. And then
I like it, but
this is great. This is not the one I used in the end, but I made a whole bunch of
the channel cover art. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it was summertime. It was getting warm, so I was like, oh, let me put a pig in on the beach. And then I didn't even think a female pig, but one came up, and I was like, oh, that's hilarious. So I made some female pigs. I ran into the AI censors. Apparently, the word bikini can be censored on Midjourney, but whatever. Also, the word fox. If you put fox in bikini, then you will not, you can't make a fox character. That's an actual furry fox, but whatever.
Does it think you're trying to make Megan Fox or something?
I don't know what it thinks. I'm not. I don't. There's probably some niche things going on the internet that I'm not aware of. But either way, I was very much able to make some wonderful images of a magical pig on the beach, enjoying the sunshine. So I do use Midjourney for my AI art.
Okay. And what you're showing here, this was one of the things that I was telling you. This has the new web interface where you can actually just go in and make your variations and stuff on here instead of having to do it all through Discord, which is really nice if you're trying to explain it to anybody that isn't already using Discord actively.
Yeah.
Have you tried? Yeah, so you just type it in.
I have not yet.
Just hit the little X on the top right, because right now you're zoomed in on one of your pictures, and you just scroll up and you'll see it right up at the top.
Okay.
It's going to start generating, and then you can click the little buttons to do the variations and see all your stuff right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I usually use the Discord.
Yeah, this is definitely, I would say try this out. You'll probably like it a lot better because you don't have to deal with Discord's interface for doing this stuff.
None of these guys look like you.
Not at all. But you can easily upload images and stuff on this one too. I mean,
they do a good job of not including the person's face. Because that is, when we talk about AI and stuff, the idea that you can put up someone's face and then make an AI image of them is terrifying. And so these services, what I find is when you do that, they won't use the person's face.
Yeah. But I mostly use the same that Jason Study uses right now. So I'm using ComfUI with Stable Diffusion, and as you can program it and take the results to a different level that Midjourney or the services that you just input the data into it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can take control of the full data. You can control how each step is handled by the AI, not only the some words, and that's it. Yeah. You can control the depths, the colors, the position, composition of the image, everything.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. When I'm doing AI image stuff, I usually don't have any idea for any of that. I'm more like Andrew, where I'm like, I want a pig doing something funny, and that's about as detailed as I've gotten an idea. Anything beyond the pig being funny, I don't really know. Or my last one was a game developer going fast. Was pretty much like.
When back in the day, in the early days of this, when you could still put some AI generated packages on various stores and make sales, I focused on trying to get consistency, because that was the whole thing. Is you don't want a package of 1,000 random images. You want a package of 1,000 images that have consistency, that you can get a sense of like, okay, I'm gonna find from this a bunch of stuff I can use for my prototype or whatever.
Yes,
but ever since I stopped making those, I've just mostly, for the most part, just made random stuff like this or icons, or like, my latest assets. All of the logos are AI generated, stuff like that. So I haven't really desired more control.
But for mostly for let's say for games, if you have a model that you trained yourself, then you with ConfUI you can generate the art that has consistency, that has exactly the way that you want it to do. I the link Jason posted, it is the link for Olivio Sarkas. I think that's how it's spelled. He made the best tutorials I know about ConfUI, and this is for the entire tutorial: how to install, how to get to it, and how to use the basics of it.
Yeah, so everybody go add that to the watch later too, and thumbs up this video while you're here.
For me, what's the best in ConfUI is that if you have someone else's image that was generated with it, it comes with metadata that if you take this image and drag drop it into ConfUI, it will generate you the entire graph, how it was created, and give you the possibility to download all the models, all the nodes, and everything that you need.
Yeah.
And as for programmers, you can just write your own nodes for it. It's quite easy, and add your solutions to it.
Yeah, I can totally see how the future applications of all this are more aligned with this. And then end users using, applications that are made with these things to produce a very specific thing.
Yeah, I would say the same as technical artists, preparing shaders and then designers using the materials. Yeah, it's the same thing. There are so many pages right now with prepared graphs of nodes, which give you what you want to generate, so you don't have to do it yourself.
Well, I'm probably still going to leave it all to the artists and just make make something pretty and cool. They can use AI.
For me, it shouldn't be that it replaces the artist in your team. It should be tools that you give to your artist, and he can work with his own art quicker. Yeah, he can take his own art, change it, decompose it, and work with it faster than normally. Yeah.
I think that's a very good point. Is that
so
development opportunity?
You will have someone that's let's say AI tool creator who will give the artist the tools that he needs to design something new.
Yeah, no, I totally see that. That makes a lot of sense. I have to start digging into that a little bit more too. I mean, I don't have a good use for a ton of that right now, but I can see it long term for a couple of different things.
Andrew, what I do like about this? I do like that all these more advanced uses that give you so much more control require somebody to become an expert in it, so that not everybody is going to be able to do what the experts in each thing can do. So we're going to, you've got this for images. You're going to have very similar things for music. Music AI has come a long way and is quite good. My whole Projectile Factory song, I think, helped it sell, and I would not have sold as many if it wasn't for that stupid earworm of a song. But it was all AI, and that was just, I made the lyrics, but it did the rest. At some point, a musician is going to be using AI systems to work on their music, but a regular person won't be able to just jump in and do something. And so I think with all of this, it does make me feel a little bit better that there will still be expertise required. It will be a lot easier to do what people now can take an expert to do, and we'll take an expert to do even better stuff, faster, better, more specific, more precise, new, especially when it comes to audio space or something where you can create brand new things that nobody's ever seen or heard before, Yeah.
And especially that tools and hardware is going this way. Yeah, you saw the new announcements of the iPads by Apple. Yeah,
And
and
the one where
one,
they crushed everything and everybody got mad.
yeah, that the tragical ad was, but the interesting part from it was that the new M4 has the new faster the neural engine, and for what you're saying about music, they showcased that it was, I think, GarageBand or something, one of the music tools. They took song and it was splitted by AI into separate tracks of drums, guitar, and so on. So AI just did it in a matter of seconds.
So that story actually sent me there's a website, I forget this website. Story sent me a thing. Oh, try it out, because you can create an AI song, then split it out, get some stems out. It didn't work well, and I bet Apple's doesn't work that well either. They just chose an example that works really well.
The difference is that when you are doing it on Apple devices, you have neural engines. Yeah, of course, you can have NVIDIA card that is also has some of it. Yeah, but the Apple devices have quite nice neural engines and quite nice ML learning, and Apple is going strongly into that. I don't know how good it works. But we will see that even Apple is going into that direction with AI. Yeah.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. And we're talking about the hardware, then yes, that's impressive. And I would imagine that Apple is going to go hard into this stuff with their hardware, because they want to sell devices. That's what they do. And they're going to make everything as possible on device. They're going to try to keep privacy as a main thing. So they're gonna focus on device stuff more than other stuff, I would bet.
Everybody seems to be doing well, at least all the device manufacturers. I know a couple guys at chip places, and they're all heavily pushing these neural processors in all the new laptops and tablets and everything else, trying to get it out to be kind of the new standard that they're there. And a lot of this stuff can run locally, so it's not all cloud based.
When we talk about data, this is a tangential to this conversation, I think. When we talk about data and the value of data often being more valuable than the money you pay for a product, the data around your usage, when you think about the data you can glean from people and how they use AI, like just imagine people talking to Alexa. Right now you say, Alexa, play this, but the tone of your voice can reveal how you feel, right? The sound of your voice can tell someone if you're sick or not. So when we talk to our AIs, which we will be doing in the future, Alexa will be AI powered. When you talk to AI and you've got a sniffle in your throat or whatever, or you're coughing and it hears you cough, well, guess what Amazon's going to start pushing next is going to be cough medicine or whatever, right? So that's just a surface level idea.
So all I get are personal injury lawyer ads because I called the insurance place again after my back accident. Like anytime I mention it or do anything related, nonstop ads. So I'm gonna make a Fire Stick. So it's Amazon sending me all the ads. Like,
I'm gonna make a prediction now on what the killer app will be, and if anyone wants to give me money for me giving them the idea for this, by all means, I do want a pool in my backyard. The killer app will be an AI that actually acts as a middleman. You can imagine a VPN. It's a type of VPN for your AI request, so that instead of me saying, hey, Alexa, play the latest Taylor Swift song, I say that this other AI translates it into a non-human, emotionless request to Amazon, so that when Amazon receives that request, they don't get my voice, they don't get how I feel, they don't get all the metadata that comes with just me talking, with me just having a voice, right? All that stuff they don't get. And you can think about that with every request you make from every AI, whether you're doing a chat GPT thing or an Alexa thing or whatever it might be. We need a VPN or AI, an AI middle person that is on device, which translates your requests into something that the companies cannot data mine. They could even go so far as to reword your actual request. So if I say, God damn it, just play a freaking classical music song, it could rephrase that to play classical music and remove all the stuff that might make someone identify who you are, the way you talk, the way the phrases used, all that stuff that ultimately will identify you as a person, not only as a person, but where you grew up, where you came from. There's a lot of scary stuff when you start thinking about it. And I think that's what we need. So saying it here first, everybody.
All right. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I'm just getting freaked out again. You know who just changed my background when I mentioned her name, so I'm not even going to talk about her anymore.
I was wondering, but
I was like, why did everything get weird back there? Like she heard me talking about her and started.
Alexa, turn on the lights.
They're already on.
Oh,
I wish she would turn off the backyard ones. She doesn't listen to that.
Wouldn't that be hilarious? Is that every time we said Alexa, turn off the lights, half the audience had their lights turned
off? Alexa, hit thumbs up. Oh, damn it. Now it's going to actually do it on my, yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Alexa back. We don't need Baby Shark.
Oh, now we know what you're watching all the time.
Alexa.
See?
Oh yeah, no, I feel really bad for the girls that are actually named Alexa. I knew a few back in the 90s, and it's got to be a nightmare now. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the code stuff because we talked about art a lot. Code was one of the main things that I use AI for. I mean, I use the art stuff for generating thumbnails, graphics, backgrounds, sometimes for UI art, although most of the time I find something in the asset store. But for icons and stuff, if I want like you said, a pig with a hat icon, like I'll just go generate, give me 100 pig with hat icons and pick the ones that I like. Yeah. But code stuff, I use it all the time. And the main way that I use it is just directly in Writer. I use the AI assistant that's built in. I go back and forth between that and Copilot. But the way that I mostly use it is just like this, where I just am in Writer, I start typing and I'm like, hey, I want to make a like a character. So I do public.
Can you make that bigger?
Huh?
Can you make that screen the main?
Yeah,
screen?
let's make it. We'll make it large. Go like that.
Large and in charge.
Here we'll go this and get it so it's right there, kind of filling stuff out. This is my Pro Builder 6 test project, which
so
we can talk about.
The AI we're seeing here, is this Copilot or Writer?
This is Writer.
Okay, so it's their autofill.
Yeah, so it's their kind of autocomplete, and now there is a chat thing right here. So if I want to go ask it questions, I can just go type in here. But this is kind of the way that it works. So sometimes if I've been working on similar stuff, it will autocomplete very similar code. But let's say I just want to make a let's make this something that's not a character. Let's make this a boss bad guy, and then we'll give it like a public and health with a whatever getter and setter. And you can see, like, I don't know if you see my screen, Andrew, but every time I just like anything that I might want to add, it's auto kind of adding. Now some of these might not apply to what I want, but it's usually going to recommend things that are similar to what I've used in the past and what it thinks might match for this class. And then it'd do like I didn't even type anything. I just hit enter twice and it's got, hey, you're probably going to want an attack. And it thinks that I want to use a good guy player. Now, these examples aren't perfect, but what I would probably do is like a public void take damage and damage. And then, I hit enter and let's see, is it going to figure it out? Yeah. So it'll write the code here to bam, take damage and do the dying. Now, it's not that code is hard or complicated stuff, but it's the fact that once it's all caught up and synced, it's extremely fast. So I just don't have to type the stuff, and it makes it so that if I want to do a void reset stats, right? Say I wanted to just reset all of my stats, and I go, hey, health equals max health, and maybe we'll generate a field for our max health. Just show you kind of
if you now go up there, it'll probably start to generating max.
It's exactly. Yeah. So I go here and I say enter, and it should.
Actually, the rest don't have maxes, generally speaking. So if you had like magic, it would probably start doing. Yeah, it's gonna keep now.
It's acting up now. No, it should do.
Add mana. Like do a public int mana, and then go to the max health, and I bet it will add a max mana.
Oh. Yeah, because you don't have this method. Yeah, so
there we
go. Yeah,
but yeah, no. So once it's synced, you can see it hasn't actually got the whole project loaded for some reason. But once it's working, like yeah, there it goes. It's got max damage on the next one, and you see like it just kind of speeds me up, and it's really just that it's doing this kind of like autocomplete on things. And I would say it used to be about 50%. Now it's about 70% of the time. It's just putting in the grayed out version of what I was going to type. Every now and then it does something wrong and I don't catch it and I misread it. But I'd say the majority of the time, it just makes me like a way faster typer, not faster at coding. Like it's not solving hard problems or anything. But if I want to do like, I took damage, right? And I didn't die, say else update health UI, right? And sure, I might want to, if I can get my keyboard in the right spot, and generate the method for that. And then it's probably, okay, it wants to do a log. Yeah. Let's see if it'll do something for, let's add a slider. So I do like a public slider, health slider, just to give it an idea of what I'm trying to do. There we go. And then go down here. There, bam. And, that's actually wrong. It did the wrong code that time. But normally it will recommend the correct things, and I'd say like about 70% of the time. So it's really been super helpful for speeding me up. And then, like I said, if I get lost or don't know how to do something exactly, I can just ask the AI assistant. Or if there's something in the code that like I'm just missing, because you know how it happens where you read the code a million times and you don't see the thing, I just ask it like, hey, here, let's get rid of the die method. Can you write the code for update health UI to update a text element and a health slider? And then it'll pop up the code, and I can just hit the little button to paste it over. So it works. It's actually writing, it looks like a UI controller for it, which is much better because that's how I would want it to be done.
Which flavor of assistant is this one?
This is just the writer assistant. It's the one I've been using as the kind of primary one for the last probably a couple months. I go back and forth between Copilot and the writer one, but and I'm in writer all the time, and it mostly just seems to work really well now with my Unity projects. I'm mostly sticking with it.
Yeah. You mentioned that you rarely get the AI telling you something new or whatnot, right? I have a different experience where I do from time to time get the AI will tell me something, and I'll look at it and be like, what's it doing? And it'll basically teach me something new, mostly because I don't know it yet. You probably do know those things already, so it's not new for you. But for anyone who's like learning more about coding, the AI can often suggest things that will make you think, wait, what is that? And if you dig deep, you're like, oh, that is an interesting thing it just did. Let me dig into that. So
I have to admit, I kind of hate how dependent I am on it, because my subscription to Copilot ran out about a month, 2 months ago. And it's not super cheap. It's one of those things you're like, do I really need it? And so I went for a month and a bit without it again, as like let's go back to whatever, just kind of get used to it. And I just kept thinking, is my IntelliSense broken? Because I'm just used to a certain, it doesn't feel like I was, when I first used it, I didn't like it because I was like, this is telling me how to code. It's like, it's kind of, it's auto-completing my sentences. You know, it's like we finish each other's sandwiches. It's like it's trying to finish my sentence for me, and I didn't like that. It was really annoying. I didn't mind it when it was like I could ask it questions. But then, now that I've gotten used to it, it's gotten good at knowing what I want to do next. And so now it's
completing
just like,
your sentences, right?
Yeah, it's correctly. And now I'm annoyed because I'm just like, I have to write this, like these funky, like I was doing one thing where I was doing event binding to the choreographer event system. And I basically wrote the same thing 6 times, but they're like different event tracks with different stuff. And I was just writing it and I was like, this is so tedious. Yeah, very, very annoying.
Yeah, I have the same. Nowadays, just writing with, I use Copilot. Yeah, writing with it, especially when I have to do some small tools for Unity editor tools. Just writing the same stuff again and again, it's just tedious when the Copilot just can generate everything.
Yeah, because you don't appreciate how much of your code is grunt work. Like the amount of creative problem solving is so small, and you don't really. Like,
it's the method names. If your method names are right, then the rest of it's good. You just have to come up with the correct method names, and the rest of it's the tedium.
It is interesting that so much really is just redoing stuff that so many times has been redone. You're just reinventing the wheel every single time.
Yeah, and to Andrew's point, while I'm in the same boat where I'm not getting like wildly new recommendations. What I am finding is I'm getting braver with problem solving. So I will go to do something like, oh, I need basically a event system of some kind. I need some collection of events that are tracked or monitored. And rather than just write my normal stack solution I would do or whatever, I'd be like, you know what? And I would go to one of the LLMs and I would be like, give me 6 ways I could do this and pros and cons lists. And then I've heard of 2 or 3 of them. 1 or 2 might be new. And I would end up turning what would be the time I would normally spend writing the grunt code. I now spend like researching a bit more and playing with the ideas. And I find that I'm writing more interesting code than I used to. One of the complaints I heard Jonathan Blow say was that, well, because it's the law of averages, you're getting the most basic code. I found the opposite. I found that because it's got the average code of people doing complicated problems, even when I'm doing a simple problem, I can query that complicated problem and I can get ideas that sort of elevate and change the way I do stuff. Another simple example is I was looking into compression algorithms recently because I had a sudden thought about how compression algorithms are going to change file formats recently. And I had a sudden thought, I wanted to see where we are, if we've replaced Deflate or any of the other common ones, but we haven't really, they're still the same. But as I was researching that, it occurred to me, it's like, oh, if I was doing a file I was saving data, I might do it, your standard solutions, JSON, or do my own byte format with protobuf. And it ended up sending me on a whole big rabbit hole of like, actually, let's look at bit packing in detail. Like I wouldn't bother doing it because quite frankly, you don't need that level of hyper condensed data structure stuff for most game things. But I was like, you know what? I want to play with it because again, I have a bandwidth because the AI has given me time to think about this in ways that are more fun. And I found myself coming up with solutions that I wouldn't normally do. Another small example, this will be the last one, I'll stop out of that. I was doing a file loader thing. And a common problem if you're loading files is knowing what the right type is. And so obviously you don't really go by extension. So if it's .json, it's a JSON file, .xml, XML file. But the fact is that's not how it works. The actual extension doesn't mean anything. It's just a good indicator to what the file might actually be. So normally what you have to do is read the actual first header bytes. And as I was doing my research, I was like, actually, a lot of these are standardized and there's tons of stuff online about it. And I started writing my own code and I was using some of the AI stuff and I was like, okay, I now have a really nice function that reads the opening 8 bytes of opening 20 really because there's various reasons. But I was reading that and scanning it. And basically I can now open a file regardless of the extension and relatively confidently say, oh, that's a GIF or a PNG or a JPEG or whatever. Now, none of this is miraculous. Stuff like this exists all the time, but it's a quality of life thing most people won't do. They won't bother with a file system where if it says .json, I'm going to just try and read it as a JSON file. Now I can do a first pass check and I can go, oh, you seem to have opened an image by accident or something. Like just little things that are kind of, I wouldn't bother doing is my point. But the AI, which is when people say it dumbs your code down, it's like, it's actually giving me more license to play. I'm finding myself doing more arguably unnecessary, but at least kind of intellectually stimulating problems,
So I guess it's on you to make it dumb down your code or not. It's up to how you use it.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Now, before we move on, I did want to mention I shared a link in the chat for a writer competition or a JetBrains competition that they've got going on where they made a not so amazing asteroids game that you can recommend improvements for. So they've got the code, they've got the whole thing, and then the challenge was to recommend improvements to enhance the game. So you submit those, and then you can submit a pull request with your code improvement, and there's plenty of room. I mean, you can see the JetBrains logo right here. You could pretty easily submit some, and then I think they were giving away 3 1-year like all inclusive packs for all of their stuff. So I would assume that includes the AI as well. If not, then just bug them about the AI adding it. But I think it's in there too. But yeah, check that out. If you don't have the JetBrains stuff, or you're just looking for a random interesting challenge. They sent me an email like half an hour before the show started, and I saw it and I was like, oh, that looks cool. To definitely share that. So it's up there now. The link's in chat though. Did you guys play the game? You have to turn off the ad blocker to get it to work.
That's the problem. I clicked it and it instantly, like, because it didn't work, I was like, I'm not messing with my browser settings for this. I don't care enough. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I noticed like I was like, it says play the game. I clicked and there's nothing there. I had to turn off the ad block, reload it, and then it's I mean, it's a game. It's asteroids, so it definitely could. They left some room.
Yeah.
All right.
Quite much room to
Yeah, so they want to make the challenge easy, right? Like it's they make cool tools, not great games.
Suggestions? Isn't that like, it's not really like about, you're not making it yourself, are you? At least that's what I read. You're just like proposing. What's the actual?
No, you can download the project, and then they have a thing so you can submit a pull request. So you can just submit a pull request to make it better. It's not like a hard challenge, but the kind of thing where you go grab it, see how they built it, and then probably spend an hour making it slightly better, and then submit a pull request.
Yeah, like, maybe not make my eyes bleed. That would be a good visual change. With the
Remove the eye blood. Oh. What's this one here? Oh yeah.
Oh, you don't die.
But by the way, this is just one of those things again, like every developer getting started with anything UI, just one quality of life. Anyone in the entire world, if you're ever placing a single UI element on screen, like health bars and score or whatever, do yourself one favor. Make a rectangle in whatever platform you're doing of your UI thing. Make 12 of them and distribute them evenly as columns across the screen. Then place all of the stuff aligned with one of the lines of those columns. So it's a really simple starting point, but it does a lot for you in terms of things like padding and basic layout, because what people don't really think about is the concept of eye trace for spacing. Now we can get into like really specifics with, Gestalt theory of, whatever, but the general point is UI is meant to impart information. And as it stands, you've got one piece of information in the very top left corner, one piece in the very top right corner. So what does your eyes have to do to actually consume that information? Move the furthest away from all gameplay in both directions. So in order for you to engage with the game, you're looking dead center at the screen. Then you have to look the furthest possible direction in one side and then the furthest possible direction in the other to engage with the information that you need to play the game in the middle. So usually there's your edge. You have some sort of container that's got about 20% padding on both sides. And then inside of that, you keep your 12-column grid and you put stuff aligned to that. It gets fancier than that, but fundamentally, you're trying to avoid this eye flicker. You don't need as fancy.
Put health bars over the characters.
Yes.
Instead of off on UI elements.
Yeah.
Or make them giant and huge on the bottom.
Or if you're playing a complicated game like an MMO or whatever, well, the reason why it's middle, center, bottom is because you're predominantly looking, because the camera, in order for, this is going to hold a load of stuff, you don't want the character dead center of screen, because it means compositional weight wise, every direction is equal. But that's not true. The direction you're facing is slightly more important because it's implying movement and you need to see ahead for context information. So your character is often in the bottom third of the screen, which means you've got 2/3 of forward incoming information and 1/3 behind you, which means your eye is going to sit in the bottom third of the screen. So where's the optimal place to put UI relevant stuff? Underneath that, directly beside where the character's eye is going to be. So it's not arbitrary. Like, you are placing stuff relative to where your eye is. The reason why top left and top right is considered useful for certain things is because it's the kind of game. If you're doing something like a first-person shooter, context information like quests or like targets are in the top right because you don't need those at all times. You can look up and see where was I going and go back to what you were doing. That's why you tend to put compasses and things up there. Stuff in the middle is cursor, which is what am I highlighted? Is it a headshot? Am I within range of doing whatever? Or shields or any other thing like that. And your own health bar isn't something you need all the time because quite frankly, you shouldn't be in a position where you're at constant death all the time. So that's there so you can look down if you need it. But they have other clues that are more an indication of a two-phase problem, which is I'm running around and I'm getting shot, and then the screen flashes or something changes color or I hear an audio cue. That's a reminder that my health has gotten to a stage I need to now flick my eye down to get attention of more context and then go back to what I was doing. So it's not just there arbitrarily, it's there because it's like second order information. Same with things like selected weapon and stuff. You can see your model, you don't need the model icon center of screen, but you do need it within range that you can see things like ammo and whatever. So a lot of this stuff is like, again, broad shapes, divide stuff out and put it relevant. So you could say score, for example, isn't hyper important. You could leave that in the corner, but health should not be in the far corner of the screen.
Shouldn't be tucked away. I think that's good, solid advice, and it definitely varies like from game to game, which I think is important to call out. It's easy to get used to like the UI in one game and then try to apply that somewhere else where it doesn't make it nearly as much sense.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Jason, did you see the new Chat RTX by NVIDIA demo that they released?
Yeah, I've had some people in my Discord try it out. They said it's pretty good. But from what I understand, it's basically LM Studio with first party. So I didn't really have much need to try it when I already have LM Studio. It's already there. You know?
Yeah, I would say it's similar. I would say it's easier, than LM Studio. It's for beginners. It's easier. You can, and it's mostly that you can use Chat GPT like AIs to.
Yeah, I didn't know it has the web
answers.
It has the web lookup thing as well, which is a nice touch.
And it can, and you can train it on all your, for example, PDF books, so you can search all your books and give you info from them rather than from internet if you have.
Yeah, but again, LM Studio will do that too, and I can also keep it locally in a file that I can control. I mean, I'm going to try it simply because it's easy and it's there, but yeah, and it has a couple of good models too. The fact that it defaults to Mistral out of the box is a nice touch as well, which is good. And it's it's a good size. It's like 7B or 8B. They're using like a good middling default model, which is nice.
Which thing is this again?
NVIDIA's new chat.
This one.
It's literally ChatGPT, but you're running it yourself for free on your machine.
Oh, okay. Just run it on your GPU.
Yeah.
Sounds like something I need. Downloading it now. I did swap out that SSD. I know I told you guys last week I was working on that the 990
did you go Evo or something. Or did you guys?
Yeah, well, they had a 990. That there was the 990 Pro 4 terabyte ones. They're on sale, so they were cheaper than I expected. Got one of those, and it's been great, nice and fast, and lots of space again. So plenty of space to set up and install these models. One of the main reasons that I got it though was because I keep installing Unity versions and running out of hard drive space.
I did that yesterday. I had to uninstall a whole pile of Unity stuff. I also deleted like at least half of the various chat models I downloaded because I was trying a bunch of them out. I was like, how different is, the different build 7 or 8 or whatever. And I was going through the different ones and I was like, I don't need 4 14 terabyte trial mod. Like I ended up just picking the 2 I like and go, it's fine. I don't care. They're not different enough for me to care about the details.
Yeah. I had to clear out constant, especially with the Unity versions. I had less of the chats. I had a little bit it was like 50 gigs or something, but Unity versions and asset store cache was just huge because I'm constantly grabbing the latest betas and stuff.
I did have 90 gig in my Unity cache. I had to get rid of that.
I'm currently deleting about 7 Unity versions as we speak.
See, exactly. Everybody just needs to get one of these. His 4 terabyte ones to fill up. So that way next year you can delete even more Unity versions.
Yeah, right.
It's easy to upgrade though. That Samsung software makes it really fast and simple to do the migration.
How many Unity versions do you have installed, Andrew?
Now I only have 6. I have the latest, all from 2019 through 6.
Well, you're about to get the mic drop here. How many do you have? Do you have? Because I know you
I only
have
have
every
7.
version. Yeah. Well, we're obviously going to pay the comparison. I'm guessing
St. Paul's got like 300.
No, right now I have 10, but I have fast internet, so I can mostly each week I install 5 new and delete 5. So it's mostly if someone reports me an error in some Unity version, I just download that version, check it, and then delete it after the support is over.
Most of my stuff always works with the latest versions, although Unity 6 turns out my low poly shader did not work. So I had to open up Amplify shader in Unity 6, recompile the shader, and now I've got a shader that works in Unity 6. So it wasn't hard to fix, but it didn't work in Unity 6.
Yeah, we have a problem with Unity 6 HDRP ray tracing and shader, so it's quite a hassle to use.
I've got oh, is it showing?
It's showing something.
Oh yeah, I was checking my installs, and I went to go grab the pre-releases, and apparently there's nothing there. There's just the new official release, which I apparently didn't have. I had the beta from the day before.
Oh, okay.
I have to install the official release now that it's out.
Well, I'm only down to 1 version, and I'm still not going to go near 6 until ProBuilder's solution doesn't feel like it's.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not only ProBuilder. There's so many things like that in Unity 6 that it's.
Yeah, another one small thing. It's so annoying. Like I hate that it bothers me, but it does bother me.
I'm gonna pop up the screen for Unity 6 too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
The right click menu now has this little search box on it, which sounds cool in theory, but all it's done is nudged everything and moved all of the positions where like the mouse lands now when you right click. And so everything is off padded to the point where all of my muscle memory for movement and clicking is different. And so every time I right click, I freeze for a second and go, wait, where's that? Oh, there it is. It's a tiny amount. That little friction always adds up. There's all of these little things where things.
Where is that?
The right click menu. Like, I don't know if you know, but when you right click anything, like even in the hierarchy, the shape of that menu is slightly different, like the actual positioning and anchoring of stuff. Because
I don't see a search thing though or anything.
I see a search at the top of it. Like for my one, it has a little search box. At least it did in the last Unity 6 I used.
No, I think that they removed that in 2022 3.3. It was in 2022.2 or 3.2.
Okay, maybe that was one I tried, but I just remember I switched to 1 version and I right clicked and I remember going, they've moved things by just enough pixels that everything is positioned just differently enough that all of my muscle memory is gone, and it drove me insane.
Oh yeah, no, I think that caused other problems with specific things too, because it was like them redoing the and for everybody who doesn't know, it's the right click context menus. They had a search thing so you could find stuff in there, but they were doing a custom version of the context menus instead of using the built-in like Mac and Windows and Linux ones. And it was something with that transition, but it caused other problems, so they rolled it back out.
It is still there though, because that right-click menu is also currently in the new ProBuilder. It's the only thing of the new ProBuilder I like, which is when you right-click something, you do get the search box context menu thing. I won't recap. If anybody's interested, there's a post on the Unity forum about the new ProBuilder, and a lot of us have given our long-winded take, so I won't waste everyone's time here. But let's just say we're not super happy with it.
Yes. I still haven't posted my reply to it. I was going to later today. I'll put the link here for anybody that wants to see it. But it was basically about ProBuilder 6 and the usability. It's changed, but in my opinion, there was no real benefit of any of the changes. It just made it harder to use. Like the changes made it more standard with like other Unity things, but they made it standard with things that I don't like to use that are just harder to use, like context menus and stuff that's harder to dig into. It also, but watching this video at the 12-minute mark was the first time that I finally figured out how to get into face selection mode. So I had gone through, reinstalled ProBuilder 6 3 times, played around with it for at least an hour, and it wasn't until I got 12 minutes into this video and I saw him click on it that I figured out how you actually get into the different modes so I could do things, because there's a new toggle to turn that on and off.
I didn't know where it was either, yeah.
Yeah, it drove me out. I was like, oh, so the thing that I need, like, it's just a new button with a random icon I would have never guessed to click on in a million years. So it just not. Anyway, you can read all about it. There's this interesting discussion there.
I will say, like, rather than repeat my whole rant, I'll say one thing because I think it sums up my thoughts on the whole thing, which is whenever you're using a new piece of software, you are basically a stranger in a foreign land looking for signposts. And your ability to succeed at the tools you're using are entirely down to what you can see relative to what you're trying to do, and you look for signs. In the old Pro Builder, there was a stack on the left with a bunch of words in English that says this or this thing or this other button or this thing or this thing. Is it the nicest UI in the
Split
world?
faces.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it tells you exactly what's there, and it has color codes to say these are destructive, these are additive, and these ones to modify things. And over time, you could use this to learn where you were going. The new landmarks are like all of the signposts on a city being replaced with floating signposts that change location and are in hieroglyphics that are written in a different icons that you have to learn what the icons mean, but you don't know what they are yet because you've not seen them before. And they're context sensitive. So depending on which hat you're wearing, they'll have a different icon. And so you have to try to learn what to do in this environment. And it's completely...
It kind of reminds me of Windows Phone.
Yeah, but for me, the one problem right now, maybe I can share the screen. If
go ahead.
I will just open, It's Unity 6, I think, F1. Pro Builder version, to be exactly in project. Pro Builder 601, so it's stable version of Pro Builder. It has many errors, but for me, the biggest problem, I have a big screen, so I can do it. But mostly, the context menus for the Pro Builder are going here. And on this label, all tools right now are going on this label in the scene view. If you go full screen, okay. But so many tools right now are happening here. If I add my river material to here, it also has to go on this one tab.
And it's so many that it's there and find it.
To be fair, you can drag them off. If you click the handles, you can move them.
Yeah, you can drag them off, but there's so many, but you can't, you have to hide them each. And I don't know how many of you know how to pop them out again.
I didn't even know you could. I hate those little things.
It should work that you click space, but in Unity 6 it doesn't work.
I was confused because I remember I wrote my own tools before, and I used to press space to switch to my tool set, and now I'm like, where's that button? Now you have to hit the top button, the triple dots. That's where they are now. It's really annoying.
They changed it, and where were the tools? Let me just check which I can. Yeah, I can live without it. Hide. Let's check if we can find them. I think they are not here. Yeah,
well, so I know because I've had this problem before, so I know where they are now. But like, they're not intuitive. It's not intuitive. Yeah.
You see. No, they are not here. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's here. Yeah, you have to overlay menu. Go into here, go into overlay menu, and now you have to grid and snap. You can have search, you can have camera, and so on. Yeah, I don't need camera. Yeah, so you have to make additional, I don't want search, additional clicks to find it. Yeah, back then it was just space. And the funny thing, if you go into edit mode, for example, you have some Pro Builder thing. If you go into edit mode, you have thing, tools, and now because here are one kind of tools that are sensitive to this context, and these ones are just for base.
Stuff. Yeah, because what they haven't made clear is that left bar is like a consistent bar where they're split into 3 phases, and they're context based on one other phase. So the reason why they're like the same tool is moved into 3 separate categoric locations is because these relate to that relates to indifferent. It's frustrating. Now, I will say the caveat, my solution is that the fact is there's so many tools in Unity that the right answer is, well, maybe don't have a single view that does everything. Personally, I use layouts that have like a very clean, this is my leveling stuff layout, this is my doing whatever layout, and I use hotkeys to switch between them. But again, it's not one, it's not intuitive for new people, and 2, it's a lot of work to set up just to be able to say, okay, I want to see the like 3 things I need,
Yeah, and this is the context that we were talking about. Yeah, so if I don't have anything selected, I can subdivide it into 1. But these ones are only working when I have face selection. Yeah, they show up. If I have to go to edge selection, and here will be the options only for edges.
And the right click works too as well, doesn't it? I think you can right click once you've got something selected.
Yeah, if you don't have anything selected, it will be grayed out. If you have them selected, but some of them are not grayed out. Like now, I don't have any selected vertices, and the connect vertices is working. I don't know why. Yeah, so it's just change of UX is hard, and I know they are pushing it with lots of tools that should be using the same UX.
Yeah, I personally like the little tab windows. Like I was always one of the nice things in Unity that you could take anything, drag it around, and just dock it wherever you wanted. The little toolbars I've never liked ever since the first one that was in there. The AI navigation one drives me nuts. I'd have to right click and minimize it every single time. I have to right click on it and maximize it to bring it back up.
And this one, I don't remember who was the most attacking this. To open this menu bar, you have to click it and hold it. Yeah, you can't right click it, you can't left click it, you have to this and drag here.
Yeah, and again, like the only indication that thing has a submenu is the little white triangle that's nearly impossible to see in the bottom corner of that icon. That's the telegraph that this has more sub options underneath it.
Yeah,
and just for everybody watching, clarify on that navigation thing. Like this little window right here, hate it. Like there's no reason I would prefer this over having something that I could just make like a little tab section down here, like I used to be able to do with the old navigation thing, and then control it, put it wherever I want, have it on another monitor, not have it sitting right here where I have to right click, collapse, and go find this stupid thing. Then I don't even know what was that. I can drag it onto a blue thing that does nothing.
Yeah, it's a lock in the corner for it's corner lock for the.
I got to go right click, expand, and then go find the stupid option that like if I would way rather have it in the original interface that was actually easy to use. The pop-ups and all the shit thrown into the scene view doesn't make it easier. For at least not for me. Maybe it's good for somebody's workflow, but there's never been a time where like having all these things in the scene view was helpful. All I need is the WASD ones and maybe the shading and 2D option. But even like the 2D and mute thing, the mute one drives new people nuts because they don't realize it's on constantly.
I will say though, so to play devil's advocate, if Dave was here, he'd probably have a very interesting, different opinion because he uses these, he makes these tools himself. Now, on paper, people are going, why are Unity doing that? Well, the truth is, it's a good idea, but the thing is, ideas are not the same as reality, right? So the point of this whole system is Unity have acknowledged that it's gotten so complicated. There's so many things going on that like you could be entirely in a mindset of doing a whole lot of stuff with nav meshes or a whole lot of stuff with light probes or a whole lot of stuff with materials or textures. The amount of contexts you could be in are huge, and the contexts aren't always singular. You might be lighting an environment that you're building with ProBuilder, which are two contexts combined together to represent whatever it is you're doing. And so how do you build a system that supports all of this? And a good example is the actual normal inspectors, which are if every single person who made an asset for the asset store completely designed all of the components themselves, this would look monstrous. If there was no concept of standardized buttons and tabs and whatever. So we're already doing this. We're already doing this in the form of like you extend the basic editor window and you replace the tabs and options. So this is an extension of the idea where they're saying, okay, we understand that there's more than just inspector windows, there's context, and contexts have actions, and those actions often have sub windows that are only relevant in certain cases. And so they're trying to empower designers to be able to say, our system has these tools which can change states into these states, which can have these context windows, so that you could theoretically click this turret and we'll show the context sensitive turret menu that lets you change the highlighted gizmos of this one turret. You don't have to have a docked window. You don't have to clutter everything up. We will allow people to start setting these things up that make everything very easy to kind of think in focused ways. And so in a hypothetical future world, this could be way better because what will happen is power users will start making their own custom workflows, and they'll start docking certain things, removing certain windows, and have a really nice setup. But the fact of the matter is they don't at the moment, and it's completely ruined some of the basics because my real problem with all of this is when they brought this in, it didn't just add features, it actively changed them. If you remember the first iteration of this, they moved those the movement controls, the kind of the standard
The
rotate.
WASD
Yeah,
or QWER, sorry.
The QW, yeah. They moved those to being under a submenu. And obviously everyone in the world hated that because the whole point was it was an instant thing you could see and interact with. And so this was an example of them basically trying to move existing stuff into a new feature layout. And my version of that is to say old layouts used to let you have labeled buttons. If ProBuilder could have done the same thing with the same kind of layout, but with labeled titled things, they could have basically transferred the existing feature set into the new feature set. But that's not they don't have those features. And so what they're doing is they're cannibalizing the existing tool to fit those features into a more limited descriptor of icon-based whatever. So it's not that the idea is good in theory for power users, but what it's doing is it's breaking the entire onboarding process that exists currently. And so what they need to do is before they say, everybody migrate your tools over to this, they need to support the other kinds of ways to demonstrate this information. There needs to be these kinds of dockable written text sidebar windows. There needs to be solutions for other common practices, like the big one for ProBuilder being a hovering little icon of the three things in the middle. Like the fact that it's, to me, that one is the killer, is that it used to give you a nice, clean, isolated from the standard bar, 3 icons that say you're in this state. And for ProBuilder, that's vital. You need to know which of the 3 modes you're in. And with this, it's one of the 3 hidden icons in a bar of hidden icons. So yeah, again, I'm not against what they're going for. And I talk about the UX stuff all of the time. I understand the principle, and it's very elegant and faster to build tools with this solution. But because it's so standardized, it has no real usability standards built into it and what it's doing. And they really need to ground up, just pause for a second and go, okay, rather than just make everything dockable and figure out how to make it user-friendly later, make something user-friendly and find out how to turn those into the system that you have. Go the other way around. Make a good thing and then modularize it. Don't make a modular system and then start moving everything into it and hoping it makes sense later, because that's what's happening, and that's kind of breaking a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'd just be happy to get the AI navigation back into a normal window, because I mean, I only use ProBuilder to make little things anyway. And I really wonder, like, I assume the standard ProBuilder audience is the same as what I'm expecting, where it's people who just want to quickly make a shape and a layout of something and prototype it. They're not doing like full on. I don't know any artists that do on like full modeling and development. I know of like one person who once told me they did all their level building in ProBuilder, but that was a program.
Yeah, like ProBuilder by design is a tool that says I don't want to learn or use.
I don't want to have to deal with art.
Yeah, like that's fine. That's a part. Like I do all of my stuff in ProBuilder because it's like I don't need to install Blender, but I can get most of the way, but I need to. And it's got a lot of power features. Like people don't realize you can actually do a lot of texture work and stuff in it as well. But like the other thing too, which really frustrates me, is I am the perfect candidate audience for this change. Because I was actually working on a video earlier today. I'm actually working on a video again, so it might take a few days to finish. But what I was doing is I'm demonstrating some of the apps that I'm using. And something that always throws people off when they use my computer is it's impossible to use if you're not me, because I hide everything. I hide all the bars, all the windows, everything's removed, and I do everything with quick command launchers. So literally I have an empty desktop with no buttons, no bars, no anything, and I do everything with the. So all of this sort of like a context-based, hot swappable command modal, that's how I do all of my stuff. I have keyboard shortcuts that bind to everything. I don't use folders, I don't use directory stuff. Even my directory stuff, I use Directory Opus, where I've customized everything, where my Explorer window is actually multi-tabbed, where you press Control-Tab to switch between it, but it has no tab buttons, I don't need them. I just bring up a quick switcher. So if you don't know what you're doing, you can't use my computer, is my point. But I know where all it is, and I set it up that way, right? So something like this that's modular and context-based, it feels like it's designed for someone like me. But the way I do that for myself is I remove all of the features, I start simple, and I have a problem, and I find a solution, and then I automate the solution, and I move on. And so I build up complexity over time. What Unity are doing is saying, we've got this super amazing, complicated feature set of all of these modular systems. Now try to do anything and just hope the contexts are right at the times you're trying to do stuff. And it's such an obtuse way of working. Like the one that I was using an example earlier is, how did you actually learn ProBuilder? when it was me, I was like, I barely understand modeling. So I'm like clicking the edge and I'm going, okay, I don't even know what an edge really is. Now, obviously I know, now, but like at the time I was like,
it lights up. You're like, oh, okay, that's an edge, right? Like, got it. Like, that's a face.
So I'm looking at the sidebar and I'm going, what can I do? Like, okay, I'm getting greener make, red is destroy of some kind. And I can and I was playing with the options, right? And so I needed to be able to look at the screen, pause, and just sort of like get my bearings and try stuff out. Things like, how does the extrude work? Can I extrude a face or an edge? What does that do? What do I try and extrude a vert? How does that work? Like, getting to play with these things and learn it is very important. And if you tell me everything's context-based, I'll right click and I'll only see the stuff relevant to the context I'm in right now when I don't even know what context but I don't even know what context I'm meant to be in, because the example I was using is like, if I'm trying to make a window for the first time, to make a window in ProBuilder, you kind of need to understand how to select an edge, create, connect two edges or wrap or whatever way you want to do it, or you can do the whole scale-effaced solution, which is the wrong way to do it. But there's lots of ways to approach that. There's like 5 ways to make a hole in geometry effectively. But you don't get there until you've like played with the tools to find it. And to do that, you're switching back and forth between these different modes. And if you've not learned how to do that, you'll be like, I don't even know where, like, I'm right clicking and I don't even know what things are available to me, because, oh no, to do what you're trying to do, you first have to switch to edge mode and then select this. I'm like, cool, but I don't even see the options that tell me you're not in the right mode for what you're trying to do, because it doesn't know what I'm trying to do, because it has no context of what I'm thinking. It only has context of what's selected, and that's not the same thing. So I was trying to say that, like, the context of how a person is engaging with the software is not the same context as is selected on the tool at the moment. And that's why it's so dangerous to build context-based solutions that aren't use case-based. If it's use case-based, where you're like, I'm trying to solve problem A, and my context matches problem A, great. That's software is designed for that. But if your context switching is based on what happens to be vaguely selected, all you're doing is hiding half of the things, which might not be the context you mean to be in. It just happens to be the one you're currently in, which are hiding the real things you care about, which are then even more confusing.
I completely agree. I mean, for me, like, what would be a great ProBuilder features would be things like not changing the UI. Like, I like the ProBuilder 5 UI much more, but adding things like a window creation, like having like some pre-built things that are commonly done just be easier to do, or having like a mode to do selection of anything, so you could select a vertex, a face, or whatever, and just have it kind of switch over and all that. But I mean, at least it's getting love, and they're working on it and trying to make it better. So hopefully it keeps getting love, and it gets more improvements and goes.
And by the way, I just want to kind
optimistic.
But I do be clear that, like, I'm not calling out the ProBuilder dev. The ProBuilder dev made a cool tool, loves the tool, currently still in charge of it, and is like doing really great stuff. And the tutorials on the site were great too. This isn't about ProBuilder. This is about taking ProBuilder and squeezing it through the shape of the existing, like, modal dialogue system Unity has. It's not saying that it's like, there's use cases for both, but it's the fact that in order to make A fit to B, it's having to squeeze into a shape that doesn't match its users' expectations. So I have no problem with it. Like, I understand the ideas, and I think there's a good use case down the line for that to work. But what I'm saying is the bridging solution needs to be better. So this isn't even about ProBuilder. It's just a really good use case of something where, as somebody who knows ProBuilder, who knows Unity, who has made those components, like written the same code that makes those things appear, I should be theoretically the most likely to be on board with a solution like this, and I hated it, and I was lost. And I was saying, if that's me, most people, especially new people to Unity, are infinitely going to be more lost than that. So
I did the same.
Yeah. And so I think it's less about ProBuilder is the canary in the coal mine for this problem, and the more they're going to try to take existing tools,
that's the problem.
It's the toolbar stuff. It's the fact that, like, it needs to be better onboarded into how this stuff happens, and not just better tutorials. I mean, like, the user themselves. I need to see there has to be a way. Currently, there's no way for me to replace the icons with labels. Like, I cannot, if I install a new asset and it happens to come with 2 toolbars, I won't even know what the toolbar is called, let alone what the icons mean yet. Like, there needs to be a solution native to that tells me, what am I actually using? Like, where is my, like, lookup solution for what these things are,
I just don't like having everything shrunk down either. Like, I got screen space so I can use it, not to make everything into a tiny little icon. Anyway,
I will say,
tell you something that annoys me.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with Pro Builder. I just don't like that to switch from local space to world space in the transform. You have to click a button. It used to be you clicked one of the two. Now you have to click.
That's what I was saying. Yeah. Anytime they do these things where it's like they literally made it worse to fit the existing. So that's what I'm saying. That drives me insane because
it's a drop down now instead of a toggle button back and forth.
So make it a toggle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's because I feel like it's because they're trying to shove all these things onto that bar, so everything's got to get smaller and smaller.
There's probably someone with a UX background who says less is better.
You need more stuff on the bar.
Yeah, we don't want to have too much because that's bad somehow because of
it's kind of ribbony. Like Office 2007 style.
Yeah.
Get that ribbon bar in there and make everything hard to find.
There's probably someone out there who thinks that ideally there should be 0 buttons except for one button, which is the menu button.
The start button.
Yeah, there's one button, and from that button you can do anything you want. Versus a billion buttons, which allow you to do all the very specific things.
I really just want like a dozen buttons that do the important things, and then put all the rest of the crap on a menu or an inspector tab. Right? Yeah. Like I don't need every single option on a toolbar. I just need like the things that I'm gonna hit multiple times a minute.
Yeah. And that's why with the local versus world space, I mean, when you're moving things around, at least for me, I switch between those two, left and right.
Yes.
So if I have Anyways,
it should be a hotkey that you can see the hotkey and a button, the big toggle right up there. It's like with a very obvious hotkey assigned. Be able to change the hotkeys right in there, and
One of my friends' houses, their kitchen lights are on the wall behind the kitchen. So to turn on or off the lights, you have to leave the kitchen or put your hand behind the wall and click the light switch in the other room, which turns on the light. Makes no sense. Someone just was like, we need more light switch space, but we can't put them in here, so we'll just put them over here. Or my car, where I had to like touch the touch screen to click a button in order to change the AC settings. So I had to look away from the road because it's a touch screen with no tactile feedback, click the button, and then click something else on the screen that was in a different area on the screen in order to change stuff rather than just clicking,
I've got that for one of the steering wheel. Like the only way to go into it is to exit out of everything, go through the touchscreen menu, and then click over to hit the button. Like,
yeah. I used to be able to text my friends without looking at my phone. I would just
in your pocket.
Yeah, I was
a pro at that.
I'm definitely paying attention.
Just sitting there.
The other one too. Back in the old days of the Nokia 3310s, they had a shortcut system. So every menu had a number. So for example, the settings was the 2 and you'd go down. And so if you wanted to get into different settings, you could basically know the shortcut sequence. So not only could you type using it, you could press, I think it was like middle 2, 5, 6, and you could go into your messages, like just from knowing the shortcut. And it also made for great memes because one thing you could do is if you press the middle, slid your finger down into the middle center and then moved left, right, it would go to the language menu and then jump to the middle and then pick a language. And you could just do that really quickly in like a split second, hand someone's phone back and it's in Spanish. It used to be great fun.
Yeah. I remember I used to text people while I was talking to them just for fun in my pocket, sitting there texting away, and they're like, "What?"
That's funny.
That was a skill back in the 1900s when I was a kid.
Yeah,
it's fun stuff. So, there's a question about the game, and so I did want to talk about Unity 6 stuff. Maybe we talk about that next week about some of the new things in there, because there's a little bit of new stuff. There's not a whole lot that I'm really excited about in there yet, but like the web GPU stuff is pretty cool. And I mean, there are a couple minor upgrades, but I'm really curious to see if there's anything anybody's really. Let's do that next week though, and talk about the game industry implosion. I put that in there as part of the title of the stream. It was one of the things that's been going on. We've been talking about was just the continued layoffs and cuts at different companies. I've seen quite a bit of hiring as well, but I mean, it doesn't seem like the layoffs have died down. What's your guys' thoughts, opinions on this stuff?
it's bad. Just no, I mean,
have you guys been kind of the same? Do you think it's still going down and still looking?
Oh yeah, no, 100%.
negative or
this is the tip of the iceberg. This is like this is just starting, I think, because it's one of those things where it's like it's like it's the classic boom industry thing, right? Like some people are saying, okay, yes, it's bad that people are getting fired, but the way it works is because there is a boom with, when everyone was indoors, there's a lot of overhiring as like studios overinflated themselves. And first they removed the excess, so to speak, as negative as that sounds. And you're thinking, okay, so cool, that should slow it down a bit. But then once people start this and they're like, actually, while we're cleaning house, let's take a closer look. And then that's the real problem, because now people are actually engaging with, okay, is this making money? Is it worth doing stuff? And so you end up getting, like, I think it's going to get much worse, because what's happening now is companies are starting to assess their own engagement in the games industry as an idea and how much money they're going to be putting in for some of this stuff. A good example of this was the Hi-Fi Rush thing, which is, of all of the studios or games to be shutting down, like, I didn't personally like that game that much, which is a real pity, because it felt like it was made straight for me. It just didn't appeal to me. But the fact that it's a game that was successful and the studio is shutting down is a big indicator of someone going, yes, it was successful, but it was expensive for what it was, and it's not worth. So those are the kinds of discussions. Now we're past we're getting rid of the excess. We're now moving into is this worth our budget min-maxing wise? And that's the part where it's dangerous. So I highly doubt people are going to start, because again, it's more than just cutting excess now. We're getting into there are people with lots of money in games reevaluating how much money they want to put further into games. And so this is getting into kind of bigger territory, I think. Again, I could be wrong. I haven't done AAA stuff pretty much ever. I've done a little bit of adjacent contract work for some of the bigger studios and places for like marketing campaigns, but I've not done like ever. This is entirely just circumspect. And from like looking at news articles, I don't have any insider knowledge in anything. But anyone who's ever been part of layoffs or those things or like seen how this stuff works in companies, it's rare that it happens in just like short bursts. And even when it does, again, it tends to snowball things. People start to like question stuff more, and it tends to get worse. So I would be amazed if it's ending anytime soon.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds good. You guys tend to agree then? You think it's just going to continue on?
I know nothing. I think games won't disappear. I think everything's going to change. But I don't know.
Interesting. I wonder what everybody in chat thinks. Like, I mean,
my one, as a player of games, though, my one sort of like hope in all of this is, and again, as bad as it sounds, there's going to be a lot of either recently unemployed or just generally frustrated devs who are talented from studios with lots of time on their hands, and they're going to end up probably complaining to each other in private groups, meeting up and making stuff. One of my favorite like pieces of media of all time was something called Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along Blog, and it was just this little 40-minute internet thing made by a bunch of actors who wanted to work, but they don't want to like work during the writer's strike. They want to just make something with their friends, and so they made this internet thing for free. And so in times of crisis like this, you tend to get creative people just sort of like jamming together. And so while it's a bad sign globally from a work perspective, I have a feeling we're going to get a couple of cool things out of like this weird time. So I'm curious to see what those will be.
I do wonder also how things are going to change. And for those of you who have kids or friends' kids who play things on their iPads, the games these kids play are very different from the games that I played when I was a kid. And the games I want to make, and the games that many people of our ages, whatever your age is, are probably the games you played when you were a kid, right? That's generally speaking what people try to do for at least the indies, and from what I found. And so when these kids who are playing Roblox don't give a crap about graphics, don't give a crap about, any logical sense of physics or anything, they're just playing these games and they spend hours on these that give me a headache. I just look at them and think, how are you even? There's no shadows. There's no real physics. Your character is a random blob thing, and they chose to have that be their character. There's random stuff. So I'm like, what does that mean for the games that are popular 10 years from now? Now, this is, of course, way down the line, so everything can
You
change.
don't have to wait 10 years, right? The current 2 popular games there's horror streamer simulator thing, there's Lethal Company, there's Roblox. We're already getting to the stage where the new generation of games are low-res party social type stuff. And on top of that, if you go back just one generation prior, the movie that came out for Five Nights at Freddy's, that is like an industry movie made on what is quite frankly a pretty crap game. Now, the crap game spawned a lot of stuff past that point, but it was really just a bad little flash game thing to start with. And community is what made that better. And then if you follow that space, there's this whole concept called mascot horror, where there's a whole lot of these basically just like broad rectangle of scary looking places in Unreal where you have some fluffy looking creature with spiky teeth, and there's like 50 of these, and there's very common repeated stuff. So there's already a culture around making stuff that's short, experiential, a lot more about vibes and about entertaining kind of content, either to record or to play with friends. So there's already that cultural shift. Like, these are people who are born using the internet socially with games in a commentary sense, and games are already starting to reflect the fact that commentary and real-time engagement is more important than some of the other stuff. And like the people growing up with like the CODs and the whatever, they're not really engaging in the same way. So it is interesting, and it's kind of like there is already a shift. And then there's the whole concept of the retro revival stuff, where N64 era graphics and PS1 graphics are making a comeback for a lot of indie stuff because of all of what you're saying. People who grew up in that era are making their games in that style. So there's actually a lot of new stuff coming out that has tank controls from old horror games. They're coming out with visual effects of, again, Lethal Company style, sort of bit crushed, whatever. So this is like, you can see it. Like, as you said, if you follow, like, watching how this is going, there's an era past. Now, the next one after that's going to be the Xbox 360 era. And so people are going to start moving into that for nostalgia next. So it's kind of funny. If you track the way games go, you can make good presumptions on, like you said, when people grow up to start making their own games. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just have to track that with when people grow up to start having money to buy lots of games.
I have a bucket full of old 360 games for when they finally get popular games. That's still awful to the next generation.
Yeah.
So, Story, since you're here, we talked a little bit about AI before you got here, but yesterday in the student call, we were talking a little bit about AI and encryption and other things that you thought were maybe going to be changing in the near future. And I wanted to kind of pick your brain on that a little bit more, on what you think is going to change there. And I mean, this is really just like discoveries that are being made because of AI, if I'm understanding right. Like they're using it to figure out new ways to do things.
This is me, by the way. This is just me spitballing. I just had one of those, like, shower thoughts when I was making a coffee a couple of days back, and I was just like, this suddenly occurred to me, something I haven't seen people really discuss, and I was like,
are there mushrooms in the coffee?
I wish. So I was basically thinking that there's certain classifications of problems that haven't really changed much, and one of the big ones being compression. And when people say compression, right, people think zip file or whatever. But everything's compressed. Like, PNGs are compressed already. Internally, they're compressed, as are whatever. And I won't bore you with the whole, like, the etymology of all of that stuff. But I'll say, basically, it all boils down to bytes in the end. Doesn't matter what it is. Even when you say text file, it isn't even a text file. It's a encoded text file using either ASCII or UTF-8 or whatever.
It's a bunch of bytes that represent text.
And when you talk about encoding, it's like, how do I make this smaller? And the short answer is how do you find patterns that you can extract out and replace with something shorter or whatever? And there's a load of different, solutions. Some of them involve graphs. Some of them involve variable length encoding, where you basically like look for patterns in sequences. Some of them are like run length encode. Like, there's various different solutions that do different things. But anyway, my point is, we sort of settled on one. It's LZ, so I always get the thing wrong, but it's basically a standard solution where you basically look for patterns with a back window, and you start to compress, and then you replace sequences that are repeated with indexes. Then you take that solution and you build a graph that orders it by how much the distributions of the items, and you end up with this tree structure. You can look into all this yourself, but basically it's called deflate. That's kind of what we've branded this like multi-phase solution. It gets even fancier if you start using things like PNG, because PNG has to because if you think about it, compressing bytes is different than compressing images, because images, what's going to be considered patterns will be different in sequences of numbers than it will like an area of pixels, because you want to make sure it's getting pixel sets compressed or whatever. Anyway, there's all of these different solutions, but we've kind of settled on a couple. So the core algorithm that makes up most compression is about 20 years old. That hasn't really changed. There's been a couple of tweaks, and one of the more recent big changes was WebP and all of that. When everyone got really frustrated, going, "Why are my GIFs wrong? Why are my GIFs not GIFs anymore? This is really frustrating."
They're all .webp files.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? I can't open this in my. No, I ran into that at first.
Obviously, it's now gotten to the point everything mostly supports them. But that's basically that's actually a really big leg up, because one of the big problems with GIFs is GIFs are 256 color capped, when the new ones allow you to do a lot more stuff. The compression is way better. WebP is legitimately the future over GIF by a large margin. But anyway, I will say, just to round it out, my point with all of this is to say WebP is the last big innovation in compression in a while, that's like public at least. And like, what'll happen next? And the question is, up until now, it's been hard to find good answers to this stuff. But now with AI already solving problems, like iterating the thing, it's where are we going to go? Like, the fact is, we can have adversarial networks like try out different solutions. And anyway, the summary of this whole pile of random thoughts I was having while I was making my coffee was, at some point, probably in the next 4 years, we'll come up with a new compression algorithm that'll require us to start changing what we consider standard file formats. And so the shower thought was, we've been using the same file formats for as long as I grew up, and I guarantee in maximum 8 years, things like PNG and things like JPEG and things like AVI or MP4 probably won't be a thing anymore, or at least not in the same way, because we're going to fundamentally change how the concept of compression works, especially in the face of things like video streaming, where we don't have to send the actual video pixel frames anymore. We can send a couple of images and then a control net mask for how the picture should move, and then it'll literally recreate on the opposing client side the similar data that matches the original core construct, and you're sending a fraction of the resources. So there's going to be all of this stuff that's going to completely change how media and compression works. And that was just cool to me, because I was like, everyone's talking about all the other AI stuff, but it never occurred to me that actually it's going to fundamentally change file formats. Like, we're going to start changing files, and like, that's just seemed like a cool random thought I had. So
that's interesting. And that also would be, I assume, drastically impacting just network bandwidth and the data that's getting sent. If it can be compressed. Interesting.
Even with upscale stuff, like, we don't even need to send it. They've done experiments where they can send a 480p video and make it look about 1440p on the returning side. Now, obviously, you have to fudge some of the details, and in the case of like AAA movie, or you don't really want someone estimating your video back. You'd like it to be what you actually made. But I do think for a lot of video content, for a lot of like normal people streaming stuff, there's probably going to be at least one AI tier where you say use AI estimations, and if you have a low-end device, it'll more than half your bandwidth consumption, because it'll be replacing all of that with onboard processing and stuff. And it's only going to get more and more of this. And then I don't know the whole thing, but the one thing it is interesting. So the way I talked about compression earlier is there's multiple ways to compress things, and one of the most interesting versions of compression that you don't really think about is like, what's the smallest you could make something? Well, the answer is you could actually make almost anything 1 bit. That sounds impossible, say 1 bit. But if the thing that unpacks the bit can unpack it back to what it was, then technically it's a 1 bit. It's 0 or 1. And if the 1 means give me the Shrek movie, you'll get the Shrek movie when I do 1. So the point is, if there's an external mapper of some description, you could have a very small amount of information that can be reconstructed with the mapper. And that's how a lot of these things like PNGs work. You don't need to include the spec for PNG in PNG when everything knows what PNG is. And so you can strip out all of the reconstitutional information that would be there because the spec is kept external. And with all of this stuff, once standards are made, we just need to have something on our machine that understands all of this new spec stuff, and the files themselves can get smaller, the compression gets smaller. So it's more than just the new algorithms, but the new algorithms can also be designed with an awareness that stuff can be, because we live in such a connected world now that we can have things everywhere. It used to be that like Flash as a platform was on 97% of computers worldwide, and that blew people's minds. We didn't have homogeny of software. Now people can download the latest update of whatever in seconds. So like the idea that our browsers are going to have Cloudflare caches of this sort of stuff that gets synchronized to your machines means so much will be offloaded to like globalized JavaScript style libraries. So yeah, I don't know. It's just suddenly occurred to me how like I've been really linearly looking at how stuff this will apply, but this is going to really change some of the stuff that like I hadn't thinking about applying it to. Yeah, LZW, that was the compression I was talking about. Yeah, LZW is one of the, it is the underpinning feature of most compression structures. For example, there's variations of it. And one variation, for example, there's like a Markov chain version. And so everything, zip, 7-zip, all of these use LZW. So does PNG internally use LZW, but they also stack it with other stuff as well. But yeah, that's like in everything. Everything that does compression uses the LZW, and that's two persons' names in the compression. But yeah, I just found the whole topic interesting. Just having making a coffee and just had a sudden like, wait, this is a big complicated thing. It's very interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I hadn't really thought about it, but you've got me kind of thinking about all of the other weird scenarios and things that are probably going to drastically change in just the next couple of years, because of these AI discoveries. I mean, I've been loosely paying attention to some of the medical stuff that they've been working on, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting. And then the robots, I keep seeing those, and they're freaking me out a bit. Andrew, you look totally different. So, hello, how's it going, Greg? Andrew had to go. Greg has popped in. I just popped up a new poll. Kind of curious if people are upgraded to Unity 6 or if they're still using the new version. So far, it looks like most are not, which is interesting. Anyway, yeah, Greg.
Yeah.
I don't want to change the topic, but I did want to say hello and see, you got thoughts on this AI stuff going forward? Do you think can you see other scenarios or uses like Story's talking about?
Well, yeah, Story was talking. I was thinking about things like video conferencing and the compression that's used for that should get more efficient. But it was also taking me back to my early days as a developer. We were writing basically our own bulletin board service. With upload, back then we used our own upload. Well, there was like Kermit and some other upload protocols and stuff. I don't know if you're all familiar with them, but I remember we had our own upload protocol, file transfer protocol, and we wrote our own compression. It was all text compression. So a lot of it had to do with specific keywords and stuff that we knew would be in the text and just tokenizing them and stuff. But yeah, just all of a sudden I had this flashback to like the mid 80s.
Out of curiosity, were you using a Huffman tree for that? That's the usual go-to for kind of a tree-based.
No, it was
text.
just totally rolled. We didn't know what it was called. We just pretty much rolled our own. So yeah, so the general, the basic thing for compression is, like if you're not familiar with compression, it can kind of feel like, well, just use the best one. That's the right way to put it. It doesn't work like that. Not only does it not work as like a base thing, different compressions work better on different distributions of data. So depending on whether your stuff has like if it's a collection where it's a bunch of IDs and every ID is unique, you're going to have a different set of compression requirements than if I have 5 million people all pick a color between one of 4 colors, because the amount of the way it's distributed versus the types of repeated data means you want to approach it differently. And so depending on like if you're doing sentences, you're going to have different distributions versus if you're doing like distributed words. And so the usual solution is to find your pattern matching. And there's also has to be a trade-off between the compression time versus the sizes, whatever. And so oftentimes you're doing things like, how much look ahead or run do I do? Do I read the whole thing and then try to find out better ways to make it more compressed? Or do I try to do it on the fly? And so on the fly, what you do is you basically walk through each line or each character and you keep a backlog of the previous stuff. And you basically try to find a pattern. And the most simple version is to say, letter A, 3 letter A's, I can replace that with 3A. So I've cut down one character or whatever in that particular thing. But where it gets more interesting is if later on you get the pattern 3A, I don't need to write 3A again. I can write an offset value that links to the original 3A because I've written it once in my thing. Now, 3A's doesn't really sound very, but it's like if I'm writing words, if I'm writing a document about cactuses and the word cactus has come up in my document 500 times, the amount of characters in the word cactus versus writing it once and then indexing to the word cactus everywhere it comes up in future saves you a lot of space. And then you can do even more, like I said, with like a Huffman tree, where you invert the order based on the composition of how many steps it should be. Because then what you do is you don't actually store the objects at all, except for the original instance, and you store offset indexes in the shortest path possible based on the distribution to cut down on the most amount of characters. So there's a load of these, and again, it's different depending on what you're storing. But what's interesting is it's all broadly the same thing, which is how do I describe this data in a way that cuts out the most amount of duplication, but in a way that I can reconstitute it back. And then with the whole concept of lossy versus lossless, sometimes you're okay with cutting certain amounts of information out. A common example with the lossy version is with images, our eyes are good at seeing certain things and not good at seeing others. So for example, banding is very noticeable to us when there's like big blocky areas of an image, which is low compressed bits, because what it's doing is it's chunking the image into pieces, finding these averages and then saving it. And so if they look off, we'll notice different things, but we're actually pretty bad at noticing some color differentials in certain cases. So you can actually cheat in some cases by lowering the color depth, and our eyes won't even notice the difference. And so you can cut down sizes by cheating in other areas. So a lot of this stuff is very interesting in that it's not even just about what information am I compressing, what information am I willing to lose, and how much will I notice it? And then you get an even fancier stuff like audio, where people notice that audio is stored in, so basically the bit rate is the number, is literally the bits, right? And how much information is there. And then you've got bit depth as well. And what you're doing is you're trying to reconstitute curves based on the dot distribution. But the way math works with the curves is they curve and they have to go through certain points. So if you've got 3 points and it is a curve, it has to, because of the way it's curving, which means if you're smart about it, you don't need to store the curve. You need to store the minimal points required to draw the line through the curves. And so you can cut out all of the individual, it's the same data because you can reconstitute the whole thing back. Which is why MQA is a garbage file format, because all the information they're adding to the file does nothing, because you can completely reconstitute it back from flat. Anyway, but it's interesting how it's like compression is a very complicated topic and there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on. But at the end of the day, the algorithms may be special, but the way you think about it is the same for everybody. You and your friends could make your own language and then come up with a way of compressing it. And the compression is simply looking at it going, how can we squish this, come up with some code book and rebuild it back later? And how much can we get as little information into this as possible? And obviously there's a lot of pre-existing clever solutions, but again, nothing has beaten the existing solution, the LZW one for now, as a sort of baseline. So I'm kind of curious to see what comes of it next,
What magic AI comes up with. It'd be interesting. Yeah, I like some of the comments of Silicon Valley. I'd forgotten that was the premise of that entire show. It's just like a better compression algorithm.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So again, there's another thing too, because if you've heard it, it might have been a working joke. So they were working on something called middle out compression, and so the joke is that, okay, I'm trying to compress this data. We're talking about like reading it from the start, reading through. The concept of middle out is you start in the middle and you compress outwards. Now, that doesn't really mean anything. Technically, it's different, but there's nothing happening there that's special. It's just like maybe we've approached it from a different direction. So it wasn't a lie, because the idea of divide and conquer algorithms exist. They are used to make things faster and solve problems. And it was just a clever combination of two vague concepts that do kind of make sense to make a thing. And people have made, based on the beam of the show, actual middle out compression algorithms. They're not much better. There's like, I think Dropbox actually does use some form of middle out for some of their compression on their stuff, but it's not like a real, like big, huge, amazing thing or anything. But the promise of the show is real. Like we are at that point now where legitimately the idea of making compressed data and finding a spec that's much smaller and be able to distribute, because again, think of it this way. If I could send you a code, we start a Zoom call and I can send you a code book that's like 100 megabytes once, or even 20 megabytes. And then I can now send you a very small stream of information that like can be decoded by the code book I sent you. I've cut down on whatever amount I was sending you before. And you can obviously find loads of ways to make this smaller, do different stuff. So the ideas that we could do are very interesting. And it's kind of, because it's just, it's not even about, people know how to do some of this stuff, but you have to try so many iterations. We talked about the medical field stuff, like with protein unfolding, the way you have to like find examples, and people were doing this in the wild. They were literally like going out and finding fungi and stuff to find better examples to then figure out what to do with. And so having AI be able to simulate billions of possible solutions and try out different things, it's not even just about intelligence. It's about buying time. One example I heard was to say that treat this AI not as being smarter than us, but imagine if you could take 10 smart people, but have them run at 1 million thoughts a second, like a million times faster, and just put them in a room. They wouldn't have to be much smarter for them to have exponentially better value than we would be able to ourselves. So yeah, it's kind of interesting because we have all of this compute power dedicated to making smart people run faster effectively, you know?
So have you seen examples of where they're using AI for compression?
No, this was purely just me kind of thinking about file formats, because I was looking at I was writing my own save file for something, and I was just like, where are we on this? I just did some research to say, like, what is the most recent innovations in the field publicly? There obviously have been private ones. There's always private innovations no one really talks about. But I mean, like, the stuff that's publicly available to everyone. And the answer really is just WebP. Like, the most recent big deal was WebP, because everything else past that was like, you know, tar balls and stuff, which even those are the same thing. They're all LZWs, with the difference being, do you compress the whole archive and then you have to unpack the whole lot, or do you compress the individual elements and then stitch it together so you can read the individual? Like, they're the same thing. It's all basically variations on a theme. So yeah, I haven't seen AI tackle this, but when I was looking at Comfy UI and how it's doing other stuff in that space, I was looking at the node-based solutions for image generation. And like, that stuff's gone far and above what I thought it was. It's not just like making images anymore. People are using it for like depth, like the depth map stuff, right? The fact that there's a model you can download to your machine, send it an image, completely fake to the image, and get back a fully gradiated depth map of the hypotheticals of all of the different, then you can use that to generate a 4-sided image of something to build spaces. It's like, people look at it as, oh, you just type a prompt in, but I've gone down this rabbit hole looking at control nets and all of the other stuff, and it's like, it made me realize that we're not tackling one problem. We're tackling this concept of like data into latent space, into conversions, into whatever. And I thought, where does all this go? Well, all of this stuff generates lots of images. There's lots and lots of more images than have ever been made before, are happening all of the time now. And if we're making all of these images, we're going to have to start thinking about storing those images and rendering them again. And our existing web tools are not going to handle those the same way. So it occurs to me, somebody somewhere is going to make a lot of money if they decide to turn their attention to finding better compression algorithms and solutions for that kind of problem. So it just, yeah, it was purely just me having a shower thought and kind of going, this is either someone is working on this and not telling anybody and going to like blow everyone away, or it's a really good business opportunity for somebody. And I was just like, this has got to be there's something here to do with compression that's going to be a big deal going forward. I guarantee it.
Yeah, it could be interesting, like some just image generation where they're basically sending over the seed for that image and it's the same image, right? And then they don't have to send the whole thing. Somebody had that as a thing and got everybody to adopt it somehow. I mean, you'd have to be able to manually make images and then somehow create the reverse the seed, but I'm sure that's...
Although that's actually more complicated than people think. I don't want to turn this into a giant AI image thing, but I will say the way that works, for people who aren't that familiar, is I don't know how to go into detail on this, but basically the way the image generation stuff works is you take your source image or whatever, you actually compress it to really small, like just like, you know, maybe 32 by 32 pixels or something quite small, so that you end up with kind of like blocks of regions, and you use those regions to estimate content back, and then you rescale it. So there's a lot of this like slicing in this latent space. Anyway, my point is, you take the image, you generate this concept, this latent space, and then you have to at some point return it back into an image. And the way you do that is called a VE, or variable something encoder. And it's basically, the VE is what like reconstitutes your image back. Now, the way you generate the images are using not only the model, but it's using the model and a scheduler, and a scheduler is also going to be using whichever sampler you're using, which could be different algorithms. You can be using like Keras or various, there's like, or Euler or Euler ancestral, and certain ones are more deterministic than others. And then on top of all of that, noise is part of this whole factor, like random noise generators. And some of them are using GPU-based noise, some of them are using CPU-based noise. So my point is, I could send you the exact specification of an image, the exact everything I used to generate it, and well, technically you have all the information. If the seed was used a certain way, or if you're using a different GPU than me, or it's using a different clock cycle. So it's not that it's impossible, but it's more complicated than just remake this image on the other side. Oftentimes there's going to have to be something. Now, you can get clever with it where you could actually send the latent space itself, because you can actually save out latents and stuff. But even for that, you'd need the matching model on the other end because different models. So this is actually a very complicated and interesting space for that. So it's probably not
I
going to be
can't
done
just
that way.
easily go make this and start making
No.
my $1 billion.
Not weirdly enough, it's slightly more complicated than that too.
Just have the AI generate it for me. It does sound cool though. I mean, it seems like an interesting opportunity. I've actually been talking to a lot of people about similar stuff with web. Not exactly that. You've got my mind kind of going. But I also, you reminded me of this, and I wanted to bring it up and share it real quick. The stable projectors. Yeah. And I've barely started looking into this. It got recommended at I think it was University of Tulsa. I was at or Tulsa University. I get them mixed up now. But they were talking about the stable projectors, and it essentially was doing mapping of textures and texture generation onto 3D models. And it sounds very appealing. It's something that I want to try out. I've got some ideas for some characters that have some pretty bad textures that I'd like to redo. I'm curious how that'll work with this. And it seems like the kind of tool that I could actually use. So, yeah, have you guys seen this or played with it or tried it out at all?
I have only seen it. I haven't had time to check it, how it works.
It's on my list of stuff to play with this weekend.
Yeah,
so.
I've not played with that one. I mean, I built similar workflows using nodes in Comfy UI. And what you can actually do for people who aren't familiar, Comfy UI is just a web URL that like shows what's happening in Stable Diffusion. And so you can actually create your own using a combination of PHP and some JavaScript and HTML. In less than like 10 lines of code, you can make your own web front end that's basically just like send a request, get back an image, and draw it to the screen. And so for something like this, you can leverage this yourself and
this
draw
time we'll be
your
looking
own thing, you know, by just adding models and doing things. So yeah, like this is obviously a really well put together like set of all the stuff, but the individual nodes and stuff all exist in other places and ways you can do it and different stuff. So it's this is kind of what I was saying, right? Where it's like there's so many bits of technology being combined here in terms of like in painting and then dealing with you know, keeping consistency for masking, and the amount of individual intelligence in different people's problem solving is kind of very interesting here, you know?
Yeah, this seems like something I could maybe go in and break some art with at the very least. I probably won't make anything cool, but I could probably get a little bit further than usual. So I'm gonna be playing around with it. If anybody has other tools like that to recommend too, be curious. We got to get going relatively soon, but I did want to ask Greg about some updates on what's going on with the learning game.
Yeah, I submitted an update on Sunday. I did a lot of optimization. So when they did their initial tests, they tested on some low-end Chromebooks.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that at one point in the game, the frame rate dropped to 5 frames per second.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. And, you know, on my machine, it was like between 120 and 200 all the time, the whole game. So
you got to order one on Amazon, huh? One of those $10 Chromebooks.
Yeah. So one thing I did is I used the Chrome Dev Tools, and you can, under the performance tab, you can set a slowdown, like 4x or 10x slowdown. And yeah, I was able to get it to be pretty pitiful doing that. And then there were a lot of opportunities for optimizations. So I was using a nav mesh agent, which is a little bit of overkill for the navigation I was doing in my game. So I just swapped that out to directly move the transforms myself. There was some animations that I was animating that whole row of cartoon numbers that are the available answers the player can click on. And I just modified that. So I'm only animating one of them at a time. Randomly, and at random intervals, I just switched to a different one. So
just turn on and off the animator, or just one at random. Yeah.
And there was a lot of other things. I was doing some pretty expensive raycasts every frame that I just check the frame count now, and if it's mod 2 equals 0, I just return. And and there's some other things I could do if it's still too slow. I think there's some batch processing I could do for rendering my textures that might improve things. I might see if I can borrow a Chromebook from my daughter to test on.
Yeah, you should just order one of those cheap tablets. They're like $10-20 on Amazon or
really?
yeah.
Okay.
They're pretty cheap. I mean, it's all those old like old Android tablets and stuff. I mean, they've been making them for 15 years and
Okay.
there's piles of them that people have been trying to give away. So they're pretty cheap. You don't want the new one that's $50 because that's too fast. You want the old one.
So my game is still under review. So
Okay.
I'm waiting to hear back from them on it.
Nice.
But they're pretty
grab that,
responsive.
maybe an old iPad too. All right, get like an iPad from 5-6 years ago.
The problem is my iPad is an iPad Pro, and it's like super high end. I use it for
exactly what you don't want to test on.
I use Piano, and I got the software for it called Fourscore. And I have a Bluetooth pedal so I can flip the pages without taking my hands off the keys. So, but it's the full, 8.5 by 11 tablet. So it's like reading out of a songbook.
That's the only iPad I have. Dustin mentioned that lots of schools are getting rid of Chromebooks. Get tons and tons of them. The kids have I feel like every 2 years they upgrade their hardware and they have like these new. They switch back and forth between iPads and Chromebooks, and then they're getting rid of all the old ones. I'm sure somebody's got some really good contracts and some deals.
Well, I used to work for the government. I was a contractor, and I worked for the National Center for Health Statistics. So whenever you see stats like this percentage of people between this age, die of this cause of death, they're using stats from the National Center for Health Statistics. So my job was to collect and analyze death data. Well, specifically to write software to collect and analyze death data. But every year they would come to us and say, okay, we got this much budget we need to spend before the end of the year. What new computer equipment can we buy? I'm like, well, our computers are fine, and like, well, it doesn't matter. We need to spend this money or we're going to give us less money next year. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do with the old computers? Can we have them? Like, no, we have to go send these to this warehouse where they're going to store them. And so not only are they spending money to buy new equipment we don't need, they're going to pay money to store old equipment.
And then eventually they're going to give that to somebody else that's going to sell it all off and auction it for a profit.
You would hope, but
they're not going to make money on it. They're going to sell it off for dirt cheap, and then somebody else is going to make money. Yeah, no, it's not just government though. Big corporations do the exact same thing. The second you start to break out into all these different departments, and that each department has its own budget, then everybody's fighting to justify and keep their budget. And I don't know what it's like in education and stuff, but
I've been on the other side of that, which is I knew a guy who used to own a small computer store, and he used to buy these giant lots of laptops for various, and these exactly the same thing, right? And they're like, because the only thing you have to do is you have to sign a contract to say that you'll either do like the data wipes or verify or whatever, and as long as you do that, they're like, well, we don't care, just take them off our hands. And then you end up getting this whole slew, and they were all pretty rubbish. And when I was younger, people like me would buy these from a guy like that for our first school laptop. And
you buy it for a couple $100, like, hey, I got a great deal.
Well, when I worked at LexisNexis, they would periodically upgrade our equipment. And we'd get new monitors or, whatever. And every so often, every few months, IT would send a global email saying, okay, we got a bunch of monitors down here. First come, first serve. Come down to the basement and grab one. Just take one each. But there'd be a stampede, and within 5 minutes, they're all gone.
Yeah.
But I got a couple of really nice monitors that way.
Sony used to do that too with chairs too. The Herman Miller chairs all the time. It was usually like after there was a shutdown or layoff of an entire department or game. They're like, well, now we got all these things, and there would be a up for grabs, monitors, usually not computers, but screens, keyboards, chairs, all that stuff that they were essentially going to give away to somebody else at an auction.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing too, is like, the other part of the whole AI side of it is, up until now, computers have gotten good enough, right? Like, yes, it's obviously fine for the occasional upgrade, but we've been at the point for the last X number of years that like phone is a really better example. Nobody needs a newer phone. A phone from the last 5 years is fantastic. You can watch high-end videos at high quality. Like, Now, granted, I do have an S22. Like, I got something fancy, but the fact is, you don't need to anymore.
There's no reason to get a 24, right? You're literally not going to be able to tell the difference.
And so computers have been like that for quite a while. And even with like, because it used to be like, I remember back when I was in college, I got one of those really crappy Android tablets, and it was actually painful. Like it was infuriating to use to the point where I actually threw it away. Like this is like unusable tech garbage. But I tried something similar with like young people I know, like I have my cousin's little laptop or whatever. They're good. They're not like, I wouldn't want to use it for work, but they're perfectly usable, unlike before. And so that's been interesting up until now, as the computers have gotten to the point where even the cheap chips, because now it's actually cheaper to put mobile phone chips in laptops in a lot of cases, because they're like, there've been so much resources put into that side of it. But my point is, with all the AI stuff, we're on a shift to that again too. So the whole idea of new requirements for like the kinds of processing people want are going to have to AI onboard chip processing. And so I kind of see even that market's going to get a bit of an upheaval as well, because you're going to have like what's considered basic behavior now, or what's the basic requirements, is going to have to shift to support the kinds of operations. Because that was what happened with CUDA back in the day too, right? Where this whole idea is that there are certain operations you can do if you dedicate your GPU to do it, and then we can optimize this and whatever. I don't think people think about it like that like future laptops are going to have dedicated AI chips, because they're going to be expecting AI to be a running thing. And so there's going to be a whole new market in new chips, which means new hardware, which means new laptops, which means new stuff. And so we're going to get a boom on that again as well, for like a new classification of laptop products and things, you know?
Yeah. I was actually just talking to my buddy at Qualcomm, and that's like one of the things they're heavily pushing is these new NPUs for laptops specifically. I mean, I think they for desktops too, but laptops are kind of like the big target right now, and I assume phones as well. So it's interesting. It's kind of replaced you're not wrong. I can't remember the last time I thought about CPU speeds. Right? Just like, hey, if it's an i7 or an i9, like whatever.
Mine was back, it was Pentium 4 was the first time last time I cared. After that, it was like, once you get to i3s and 5s and 7s and 9s, you're like, we're past the point. None of this matters now. We're fine.
It was like, once you got, and you knew you had a 7 of some sort, it was probably going to be fine to do something, right? If you got the really cheap ones, maybe you'll have some issues, but yeah. It's, yeah.
What was the first PC you ever had, Story?
Mine was a Dell Inspiron, I think it might have been. But it was
also a laptop.
C500, yeah. Like I said earlier, I got one of those cheap office surplus giant laptops. One with the little, like, it was designed for an office. It was completely square. It was completely non-ergonomic and had that little red nipple mouse in the center of the thing. It was at 500 megahertz. And I remember that in vivid detail because it drove me insane, because I was big into emulation and I used to play PS1 and N64 games. And the normal Project 64 and 1964, the two big N64 emulators, had a requirement of 700 megahertz to run on like a basic level. And the only N64 emulator I could run on my actual laptop was one called Daedalus. And it worked. And I could just about play Mario 64 and a few others. And then I finally got an upgrade into whatever the next classification. It was a 700 series away, and I was 720 megahertz, and like my life was never. I was so happy because I could now play like an entire classification. I could change my emulators, do all the stuff. So yeah, 700 megahertz was back when I was like, this is amazing. This is so powerful.
All right, so my first PC was an 8086 with 512K of RAM, a 20 megabyte hard drive, and I think it was a 4.77 megahertz CPU. And I remember when I was so excited to get a 286 with a 10 megahertz CPU and a full 1 megabyte of RAM. Right.
Now, did you start with something before the PC with even less RAM?
Well, you know, I had a Commodore 64, and then a Commodore 128, and then the PC. Yeah.
Well, technically, my Atari 2600 was my first device, but yeah.
Okay.
So
yeah. But I learned to program on the Commodore 64.
Now, real quick, Dustin called out the fact that people keep auctioning off new stuff. Like when you look at these, regularly for all kinds of stuff. Real quick, anybody that's wondering like where you actually find these kinds of things, like you can see this is one of the more popular auction sites that I like to look at, and they've got all kinds of stuff on here. And hey, look at that, Bitcoin miners, they're on auction. Like, you find all kinds of different stuff. These are like stacks of laptops for $30. You get a pile of them, but you'll find all kinds of different stuff on here. Some high end stuff, low end stuff, but it's all going to be like around 10% of the new cost. So I'll drop a link in chat if anybody wants to go check that out. They also got all kinds of other crazy stuff if you need farm equipment or industrial stuff or cars or anything else. I bought multiple things from the auctions on there myself. So
it's also worth noting too that a lot of people don't realize there's entirely separate corporate only wholesaler websites. So if you've ever worked in an industry that's like, again, one of the big companies I was working for, they're the person in charge of supplies for that company had an ID to work with a wholesaler, and they have a very specific, they were getting like off the VAT a bunch of discounts on stuff because they were buying in bulk from this particular wholesaler directly, so you don't pay all of the markup from going retail, which was awesome because if you knew them, you could be like, yo, put in a few extra hard drives for me, and you could buy them off them as like a go through the like cheaper discount solution. So I got some of the early tech from people I know. I was still buying it myself, but I was getting like a 40%, 50% corporate discount that you could not get from any store,
Yeah, I got my gaming laptop with an employee discount from a friend who works for Lenovo. So he let me use his employee discount and got a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I think Dell have a 40% as well for theirs, because I had someone I know with Dell who I'd always get them to get me stuff, and I don't have that contact anymore though.
Yeah, those ones, they usually limit them to like a certain amount per year though, but I've done the same. But these things, like this one here, you can see it's an i7 laptop. I don't know the details on it, but they're at like $50, and they'll probably all go for around double that, like around $100. And it just really, really cheap getting this stuff. So I don't know. I don't know how I got into auction stuff, but I look at these on a regular basis like a weird addict. And I mean, I've seen some really good deals on here too. Just to clarify, like they're showing some crappy little monitors on here, but I've seen 75-inch and 85-inch brand new touchscreen monitors sell for $150. And they're like brand new, like $3,000 ViewSonic touchscreen monitors just up the street. And they sold, I think, like 10 of them right around $100 a piece. The only reason I didn't get it is because I already have too much crap in storage. I don't have any more space to store things that I don't necessarily need. But
honestly,
lots of really good deals on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like, the only thing I said is most of those tend to be really great. Like Dustin said, most of the Latitudes, I like worked with tons of Latitudes back in the day, and they're perfectly fine. The only thing you're going to have an issue with is most of them use onboard graphics, and so you're like, it's not only that it won't play games well, it's that you literally can't play more than like even less than you think you would in some cases, because it literally doesn't have the graphics horsepower for even some relatively basic games sometimes. So literally games are not for all of them, but for a lot of them, games are relatively off the table. But for like work stuff, it's perfect, absolutely perfect. Like I've had no problem using these for normal work stuff.
If you need some desktops, they got a set of 5 for $1. Yeah, anyway, enough auctions. Lots of cool stuff there. I dropped the link in the chat. Yeah, monitors, great way to get them too. I would never want to pay full price for those 27-inch monitors and 30-inch ones. They're all nice and cheap there. Anyway, anybody got any last second topics before we wrap stuff up for the week?
Nope.
Nothing left? All right. I don't think I've got anything. I guess everybody go check out that writer thing they're doing. It was kind of interesting. You can submit a pull request to their not very great game, and you can win a year subscription to their stuff. The spring sale has all ended, so can't link that. Got a link for Andrew's Projectile Factory though, and Powell's Assets if you want to go check out some of the stuff on the asset store. And then the I don't even have a link for the game architecture course, but that is kicking up pretty soon. We've been having the calls still a couple times a week. Interesting stuff we're going through. The game is essentially 3D third person run around like a Baldur's Gate and get into encounters and go through a lot of the similar systems, just scaled back. Now, obviously not a full-on Baldur's Gate, but it's showing how to do a lot of those systems, putting all of that stuff together. And then if you want to see more Jason's story, somewhere in here I have a great code that takes you over to Jason's stories. There it is, the Jason story Discord. I need a pretty image for that so that everybody can go over there and check that out.
I tried to buy him a coffee to get his Discord.
Yes, you do have to buy him a coffee or take him out on a date.
Yeah, no, everyone has to buy at least one coffee because that's how I keep the gates clear. I have a guard at the gate and he requires coffee to let everyone in. That's the rule. Yeah. Oh, and I'm working on a video. I'm working over the weekend. Might be out Monday, maybe Tuesday. And it's kind of relevant to what we were talking about, which is we talk about like workflows and stuff. And the example for me was that I see people do lots of really long, tedious workflows for stuff, and you can make your life so much easier. And the example, I'm going to go through the basics. I was asked like, what software do I use? And I was kind of going through a few things. And so I thought, you know what, let me just like actually set this up. And so the first thing I'll do is the one I use every single day, all of the time. And it's a launcher called Flow Launcher. And I'll go through like how I use it. And specifically the idea that like, I don't start with all the features. I turn everything off. I start with this empty thing. And then every time I go to a directory and go, oh, I wish I could get there faster, I do something to make it faster. And I kind of demonstrate how you can make a very custom workflow over time that isn't going to overwhelm you. And so I have videos recorded. I just have to go through the whole edit process, do some voiceover for it, and, add some fancy effects, and we'll be good to go. So
how long do you think that's going to be?
I'll hopefully get over the weekend, but might be Tuesday. So
nice. And then, power cord. I just realized Corvallis in there. And then the last one is, of course, Greg's YouTube channel. I assume you're already all subscribed, but if not, the link is in the channel. You got anything new coming up, Greg?
No, but I did just recently interview that Andrew. He's got a really good YouTube channel. He does a lot of life in the, what it's like as a game dev. He does some dev logs, but he doesn't really like to do tutorials. But anyway, it was a really interesting interview with him. So people should check that out and check out his channel.
Nice. All right. I'm going to have to go watch that. I haven't seen this one yet.
I thought it was pretty good. There's an interesting talk about the whole, because he's had a bunch of people like Thomas Brush appear in his videos and stuff. He's kind of done a few interesting collabs on things.
Yeah.
I know you did this while I was gone, so I missed it.
Yeah, I was smart this time and recorded it because I had so many technical problems when I did the live stream with Rick from Game Dev TV that I said I'm going to record this interview.
That was smart, yeah, because the Rick one, it did have some rough issues, to be fair, yeah.
Okay.
But hey, on the plus, Rick is really good at stalling for time, so he
bailed me out big time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Rick is great. By the way, they've got their courses up on the asset store too. And if you've seen that, everybody can go check it out. I think they have a deal going on, and it's like directly linked on the asset store. Just go to the asset. I've dropped a couple asset store links in there. Just go up to the top, you can see it. All right. Well, I think that was it for this week. Anybody? Is that it? We'll be back next week. Same normal time, and I got nothing else. Are teas acceptable as an entrance fee? They have to have mushrooms in the teas, Corvallis. As we were discussing earlier. All right. Good seeing everybody. We'll see you again next week. If you got comments, questions, drop them down below. Otherwise, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.